My name is Jacob Fisher. I'm 91 years old, and more than 60 years ago, I did something that changed the course of my entire life. I left the Amish. Most people hear that sentence and immediately ask the wrong question. Why did you leave? But after 91 years, I've learned that the better question is this: what stayed with you? Because the truth is, I left the community, I left the horse and buggy, I left the lanterns, the fields, and the little white schoolhouse where I'd spent my childhood. But there was one lesson, one simple lesson my father planted in my heart that followed me everywhere I went. It followed me into the modern world, into my marriage, into my business, into every success I ever celebrated, and every regret I still carry. If someone had asked me at 20 years old what mattered most, I'd have said freedom. If you ask me today, I'll give you a very different answer. I was born in 1935 on a small Amish farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Our farm wasn't large, just enough land to feed the family, keep a few cows, grow vegetables, and raise chickens. We didn't have electricity, no television, no radio playing in the background, no phones buzzing every few minutes. When the sun came up, our day began. When the sun disappeared, our day ended. As a little boy, I thought everyone lived that way. I didn't know the rest of America was racing somewhere. We weren't. We measured our days differently. Not by appointments, but by seasons. Spring meant planting. Summer meant long days in the fields. Autumn meant harvest. Winter meant family gathered around the kitchen table while snow quietly covered the fields outside. Looking back, our life wasn't easy, but it was never hurried. My father was a carpenter, not because he wanted to build a business, because every community needs someone who knows how to work with wood. He built barns, kitchen tables, rocking chairs, cradles for newborn babies, and sometimes coffins. As a boy, I loved watching him work. He never rushed. He'd run his hand across a rough board before making the first cut, almost like he was introducing himself. One afternoon, when I was about 12, I asked him something. "Papa, why do you work so slowly?" He smiled without looking up. Then he laid his tools on the bench and said, "Jacob, wood remembers impatient hands." I laughed because I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He picked up the board again. If you hurry through something made to last, you'll spend twice as long fixing it later. At the time, I thought he was talking about furniture. It took me almost 80 years to realize. He was talking about life. Every evening our family gathered around one long wooden table. No one brought work to dinner. No one hurried through the meal. We talked. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we sat quietly. Nobody thought silence was uncomfortable. Silence was simply part of being together. Today, restaurants are full of families staring at glowing screens. Back then, the most interesting thing in the room was each other. I didn't appreciate that when I was young. Children rarely understand the value of ordinary moments. They simply assume they'll last forever. Everything changed when I was 21. A local carpenter hired me to help repair a roof on a farmhouse owned by an English family. That's what we called anyone who wasn't Amish English. Their daughter brought us lemonade during the afternoon. Her name was Sarah. She smiled the first time we met, not because she knew me, just because she was kind. Over the next few weeks, our conversations became longer. She asked questions about my life, about the farm, about why we dressed the way we did. I asked about hers, about the city, electric lights, movies, cars. It felt like two different worlds meeting in the middle of one dusty front porch. I didn't fall in love all at once. It happened slowly, one conversation, then another, then another. Sometimes the biggest changes in your life don't begin with a dramatic moment. They begin with someone asking how your day was and actually waiting to hear the answer. When I finally told my parents about Sarah, they weren't angry. That surprised me. My mother quietly lowered her eyes. My father looked out the kitchen window toward the fields we'd worked together since I was old enough to hold a shovel. After a long silence, he asked only one question. "Do you love her?" I nodded. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he sighed. "Then this road is going to cost you more than you know." At 21, I thought he meant money or hard work. I had no idea he was talking about something far more expensive. Sometimes the choices that bring us happiness also bring us heartbreak, and life rarely lets us have one without the other. A few weeks later, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left home. I still remember that morning as clearly as if it happened yesterday. The sun had barely risen. The fields were covered with a thin blanket of fog. My mother stood on the porch with tears quietly running down her face. She didn't try to stop me. She simply hugged me longer than she ever had before. My younger brothers stood beside the barn, pretending to be busy. None of us knew what to say. My father walked me to the end of the dirt lane. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then he placed his rough hand on my shoulder, the same hand that had built hundreds of tables, rocking chairs, and homes. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Jacob, wherever life takes you, don't let the world convince you that more is always better." I nodded. Honestly, I don't think I really heard him. I was 22. Young people rarely believe old men know something they don't. I climbed into an old pickup truck with everything I owned packed into 2 small suitcases. As I drove away, I looked in the mirror one last time. My parents were still standing there, growing smaller until the road curved and they disappeared forever. You never realize which goodbye will become the last ordinary one. Life outside the Amish community moved fast, faster than anything I'd ever known. Electric lights, bussy highways, televisions in every living room, stores filled with things I never knew existed. At first, it felt exciting. Every week seemed to offer something new. I found work as a carpenter almost immediately. Turns out, wood doesn't care what church you belong to. If you know how to build something well, people will always need your hands. I worked harder than I ever had on the farm. Within a few years, I started my own woodworking business, cabinets, dining tables, custom furniture. People loved work that was made by hand. Soon my calendar was full. Orders came faster than I could finish them. For the first time in my life, I had money, real money, Sarah, and I bought a beautiful little house. We had electricity, a washing machine, a television, eventually a second car, then a bigger house, then a bigger workshop. Every achievement felt like proof that I'd made the right decision. Whenever someone complimented my business, I stood a little taller. Whenever people called me successful, I believed them. Then our daughter Emily was born. The first time I held her, I made the same promise every father seems to make. I'm going to give you everything I never had. At the time, it sounded like love. Looking back, I wonder if it was fear wearing a different face, because once again, I threw myself into work. I wasn't chasing luxury. I was chasing security. Or at least, that's what I told myself. The orders kept coming. I hired more craftsmen, bought larger equipment, expanded the workshop. Every year I promised Sarah, just one more busy season. After this contract, things will slow down. She smiled. She believed me. I believed me. But life has a way of turning temporary sacrifices into permanent habits. Emily loved drawing. Every evening she'd run into my workshop carrying another picture she'd made. "Daddy, look what I drew." Most days I'd smile without lifting my eyes from the workbench. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." She'd wait, hoping I'd actually look. Sometimes I did. Too often I didn't. Children don't ask for much. They don't care how successful you are. They don't care how many customers admire your work. They just want your attention. And attention is one of the easiest gifts to promise, yet one of the hardest to give. One Saturday morning, Emily walked into my workshop wearing a little blue dress. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. She was holding 2 fishing poles. "Daddy, you promised we'd go fishing today." I looked at the clock. Half a dining table still needed sanding before Monday's delivery. I remember wiping the sawdust from my hands and saying, "Can we go tomorrow?" She looked down at the fishing poles. "Okay. Just okay." The next weekend another customer called, then another. Tomorrow kept moving. Months later, I found those same fishing poles hanging untouched in the garage, still wrapped together with the little piece of string she'd tied around them. It's amazing how an ordinary object can carry so much guilt. Even now, whenever I see an old fishing pole, I don't think about fish. I think about promises. Sarah noticed the change before I did. One evening, she found me working alone in the shop after dark. She walked over and gently brushed the sawdust off my shoulder. Then she asked, "Jacob, when was the last time you watched a sunset?" I laughed. "I've been busy." She smiled sadly. "That's not what I asked." I couldn't answer, because I honestly couldn't remember. Somewhere along the way, I'd become so focused on making a living that I'd stopped noticing the life I was living. A few months after that conversation, my father wrote me a letter. He wasn't a man who wrote often. In fact, I could count every letter he'd ever sent me on one hand. The envelope was plain. No return address. Just my name written in the careful handwriting I'd watched him use all my childhood. Inside was only a single page. No lecture, no disappointment. Just a few simple words. Dear Jacob, I hope your hands are still building things that make people's lives better. Your mother misses you every day. The farm is quiet without your laughter. Then, at the bottom of the page, he wrote one sentence. Never become so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. I folded the letter, put it in my desk drawer, and went back to work. I wish I could tell you that I understood those words. I didn't, not then. Sometimes wisdom arrives years before we're ready to receive it. Life kept moving. Emily grew into a young woman. She graduated high school, then college. One afternoon, she came by the workshop to tell me she'd accepted a job in another state. I hugged her, told her how proud I was. Then she smiled and said something that stopped me cold. Dad, I hope my kids get more of me than I got of you. She wasn't trying to hurt me. She simply told the truth. And the truth has a way of cutting deeper than anger ever could. After she drove away, I walked through my workshop, every table, every cabinet, every rocking chair. I'd built furniture that would last for generations. But somehow I'd forgotten to build enough memories with the people sitting around those tables. A year later, I received another phone call. This time it came from my younger brother. Our father had become very ill. Sarah looked at me and quietly said, "You should go." The drive back to Lancaster County felt longer than it had 60 years earlier. The roads looked smaller. The fields looked familiar. When I turned onto the old dirt lane, everything suddenly felt like home again. The barn was older. The paint had faded, but the porch was exactly as I remembered. My father was sitting outside in a wooden rocking chair, thinner than I'd ever seen him, his beard completely white, his hands resting quietly in his lap. I sat beside him. For a long while, we simply watched the wind move through the cornfields. Neither of us needed to fill the silence. Finally, he smiled. "You've done well for yourself, Jacob." I nodded. "I've been blessed." He looked toward the horizon. Then he asked me one question, a question that has echoed inside me ever since. "Are you at peace?" Not, "Did you make enough money?" Not, "How big is your business?" Not, "How many customers do you have?" Just, "Are you at peace?" I opened my mouth, and nothing came out, because for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know the answer. I had spent decades building success, but I had never stopped to ask whether success had actually made me peaceful. My father passed away 2 weeks later. After the funeral, my brother handed me a small wooden box. Inside were my father's favorite pocket watch, his work gloves, and the letter I'd forgotten in my desk all those years before. I read it again, slowly, this time. Every word landed differently. Never become so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. Suddenly, I understood what he'd been trying to teach me since I was 12 years old in that little workshop He wasn't teaching me how to build furniture. He was teaching me how to build a life, one that couldn't be measured by money or possessions or success, only by the people who felt loved because you were there. These days, I'm 91, Sarah has been gone for 7 years. Some mornings, I still pour 2 cups of coffee before remembering it's just me now. Old habits have a way of becoming old love stories. I spend most of my time in a small workshop behind my house. I still build rocking chairs, not because I need the money, because I enjoy watching a simple piece of wood become something another family will treasure. Only now, I don't hurry. I stop when the sun begins to set. I sit on my porch. I watch the sky change colors. I wave to my neighbors. Sometimes I do absolutely nothing. Years ago, I would have called that wasting time. Now, I know better. Peace isn't found after you've finished your work. Peace is found in remembering why you were working in the first place. People often ask me if I regret leaving the Amish. The answer surprised them. No, I don't. I loved Sarah. We built a beautiful family together. I would choose her again 1,000 times. But I do regret forgetting the lesson my father tried so gently to teach me. I left the Amish, but the greatest wisdom I ever received came from that little farmhouse. The world spends every day telling you to chase more money, more success, more recognition. My father taught me something far more valuable. Protect enough time, enough laughter, enough evenings around the dinner table, enough quiet mornings with the people you love, because one day you'll discover that the richest people aren't the ones who own the most. They're the ones whose hearts are full when the day is over. So if you're listening to this today, don't wait for retirement. Don't wait until life slows down. It rarely does. Go home early once in a while. Take your child fishing. Sit with your parents. Hold your spouse's hand while there's still time, because 60 years from now, I promise you this, you won't remember the extra hours you worked. You'll remember the moments you almost missed. And from where I'm sitting, those moments are worth more than anything money could ever buy.